Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the 3 Star Lounge. Today, I would like to talk about Spider Man 2. Now, with the game being relatively new, there's obviously a lot of discourse surrounding the game. Some of it is good, some of it is bad, some of it fair, some of it not. But now that I've secured my platinum trophy in the game, I feel like it is now a good time for me to be able to put my 2 cents in on the game. Now, for my money, Spider Man 2 is a fine sequel that does a lot to move forward the game in just about every aspect of it, being combat, stealth, traversal, and storytelling. Now, no game is perfect, and this one has its flaws as well. However, I feel like a lot of the negative discourse surrounding the game has less to do with the actual flaws of the game and more to do with just things people didn't like and expectations they have for the game that may or may not have been reasonable from the get. Now, before I get into specifics, I do want to ask this question, and you can leave your answer to it in the comments below. If a sequel to a game has a clear direction and vision, and they succeed in that direction and vision, however, it's gone in a direction that you personally do not like, does that make the game bad? Or is it just not for you? Anyway, when it comes to the Marvel Spider-Man franchise, there's 2 aspects of the game that receive near universal praise, those being traversal and combat. And as the 3rd game in the series, Spider-Man 2 had an obligation to push at least those 2 aspects of the game forward. And as I said before, they pushed forward every aspect of the franchise. So that includes traversal and combat, and that's where we'll begin. Combat and traversal are the aspects of Marvel Spider-Man 2 that do the best job of displaying what this game is all about in terms of a sequel. Because it's not just about giving us more Spider-Man, it's not about just giving us more of both Spider-Men. It's about giving us the most fluid version of both characters we've ever had. To that end, in terms of traversal, they've added a plethora of moves to your disposal to get around the city faster than ever before. In terms of swinging around corners faster, using loopy-loops to gain momentum, and that's not even mentioning the new websuit. This alone added a lot of traversal capabilities to the game because of the way it's set up. The way things are in game, you can go from end to end in this world without touching the ground, without swinging a web, nor without using any jump boost or speed boost in the air, just by using the wings and the wind currents throughout the city to get around. Not only that, they've given us the biggest map we've ever had. The first 2 games only take place in Manhattan, but now we have Manhattans, Queens, as well as Brooklyn to play with. So we have more map as well as more ways to get around said map. And not only that, we even have new small details about traversal that make things just that more interesting, like the ability to skid across the water when you have momentum build up and you land in the water as opposed to just sinking in, or the ability to turn the web assist all the way down to have more manual control over where your webs are going, and even turning falling damage on if you really want to spice up the traversal aspect of the game. All of these added features alongside the traditional wall running and point jumping of the Marvel Spider-Man games leaves you with a traversal system where there is no moment where you can't go fast within the game. And check it, if that's not fast enough for you still, even fast travel has been improved. For the moment you unlock fast travel in any district of the city, you gain the ability to open up your map, pick any point on the map within that district, and just fast travel there almost instantly. You just go, pick a spot, and you'll just go there. It'll show you a little animation of your Spider-Man swinging in, flying in, whatever it may be, and boom, you're there. It's even faster than fast travel in the previous games. So yes, that's an improvement if you ask me. And this leads directly into combat, because you're swinging somewhere, aren't you? And in Marvel Spider-Man 2, you can go from swinging to fighting and swinging once more in the smoothest fashion you ever could in any of these games. And that is due to no small part to the changes made in the combat system as well. This also doubles as the first point of friction between those who have played all 3 of the Spider-Man games in the Marvel Spider-Man franchise, and those who only played the first and third games. Because one big change that has happened for combat in between the first and third games of this franchise is the tossing out of the radial gadget wheel. Now, anyone who played all 3 games would have sure noticed that they were moving away from the radial gadget wheel, or at least maybe had suspected such a thing as they pared back how many gadgets could be found within the wheel. But that doesn't really mean you don't have as many tools as you used to, because many of the missing gadgets have just been moved to abilities or powers that the Spider-Man can make use of, as opposed to being a radial ability. This also removes the slowing down of combat for you to open up your gadget wheel, select the gadget that you want, and maybe accidentally pick the wrong one. And if you're wanting to go back to your traditional web shooter, you have to double tap or open up that gadget wheel again just to go back to your normal web shooters. Whereas with this new system, the 4 gadgets you do have been assigned to a combination of the R1 and face buttons, so that you have quick access to each one while never once losing access to your web shooters. This means that you have full access to every tool at your disposal at all times, assuming you have ammunition for the gadgets, and at no moment do you have to slow down in combat, which is great because you never know when you're in combat when you need to use 2 different gadgets in quick succession. Whereas in an old game where you wouldn't need to do that, you would have to open up the radial menu 2 separate times, go from gadget to gadget just to do that move. Whereas here, you hit 2 separate buttons and boom, boom, you've done it. This allows for greater crowd control as well as a little bit of ease in terms of mastering the parry system, because you are able to use gadgets as a way of interrupting early undodgeable attacks you are exposed to in the game. Yes, building on the idea of unblockable attacks, Marvel Spider-Man 2 introduces a parry system that addresses the issue with the combat system being that dodging was extremely powerful within the Marvel Spider-Man franchise. And adding a parry system featuring unblockable attacks as well as undodgeable attacks really mixes combat up in an all-new way. The shield bearer enemies that you're introduced to about midway through the game are some of the more difficult standard mob level enemies I recall ever facing within this franchise, largely due to them being shield bearing brutes that cannot easily be shield yanked, that also have strings of undodgeable or unblockable attacks within their normal attack strings that can come out quickly, especially when you're being first introduced to them. So cool. They gave the enemies new tools to deal with Spider-Moon, but you also have plenty of new tools to deal with your opponents as well. And a lot of even smaller moves have been improved and can go unnoticed by someone who's looking for something more big and flashy in terms of new features. Let's take a look at the humble web disarm. Within the old game, the web disarm was slow, but an important feature of your moveset. You would grab the weapon, swing it around a little bit, and then chuck it at an enemy. And in Miles Morales, you would even charge it up with your bioelectricity and have a little boom explosion. All right, cool, well, bam. But now in Marvel Spider-Man 2, that move has been sped up, where you just yank, pull that gun, and you throw it back at them. They've also added new moves that can quickly dispatch street level enemies, like being able to yank enemies from side to side, as well as the usual up and down. This seems like it wouldn't be a lot, and I even thought that move was not a whole bunch, but in practice, it can be one of the more powerful tools you have, as you can just web up an enemy and then yank them into a wall and they're disposed of, or yank them off a building and the same thing. And if that's not good enough for you, you can trap an enemy between the wall and your feet. They've added lots and lots of ways to punish your opponent. And they've even added a little more spice to the general combat flow as well by not allowing you to use focus to heal until you've gotten a full bar, as opposed to letting you use however much focus you have stored up to heal however much you can. I know this seems like a very small change, and that really kind of is, but this small change does a whole lot to change the flow of the combat because it makes the whole thing more deliberate. It makes every mistake you make matter a little bit more, and thus that much more intense. Lastly, before I move off of combat, I would like to talk about the power/abilities within the game. Now, much like the gadgets, your powers are on a quick fire method with the L1 and face button combination for your 4 powers. And even those have more utility than just being powerful abilities that you can use. For example, the Electro Web you can spread out to multiple enemies and is kind of a replacement for the Electro Webs from the previous Spider-Man games, as well as the Spider Dash, Spider Jump, and new abilities that you get throughout the game, each having a sub function that gives them more utility outside of their obvious damage dealing or crowd control function. This leaves us with a combat system that has been sped up and made much more fluid while maintaining most of the features that made it fun to begin with. This makes it feel different than any of the other Spider-Man games because it's not simply a matter of dodging at the right times and zipping to the correct enemies when possible. There's a little bit more attention that need be paid to get through the larger group interactions of this game. Leaving that behind, let's take a moment to talk about stealth, because the Marvel Spider-Man series has always had good stealth. From the first outing to this most recent one, stealth has been a solid aspect of the game, but what has changed is how stealth interacts with the rest of the game. For example, in the first game, say you were looking to do an enemy outpost and you've decided to go in as stealthy as possible until failure. Now, should you succeed at dispatching the initial offering of enemies without being detected, that would be that. However, in the first game, even if you failed towards the end, those same enemies would still be all that remained. Something that was improved on in Spider-Man Miles Morales is if you're doing stealth and you are caught, more enemies will spawn in to allow the combat section to go on a little longer, and it doubles as either a punishment for those who fail at stealth, but it is also a reward for people who just enjoy combat and would like more of it, or if you were to just go in guns blazing from the jump, that same interaction happens where more enemies are being called. It just saves that time of the initial stealth run. Spider-Man 2 goes even further with this, because while it does keep the calling in of reinforcements for failure to do an entire outpost stealthily, they've also added in one tool that is a complete game changer, and that would be the web line. Anyone who has played Batman Arkham Knight will be familiar with the line launcher equipment that you have in that game. While it is more or less optional as you don't have to use it to do anything, and honestly, outside of a few Riddler puzzles, I'd completely forgotten that it was in the game. That's how many tools are at your disposal within those games where you don't have to use every single one over the course of the game and you'll still be fine. But I digress. Anyone who's played Arkham Knight will at least be vaguely familiar with how the line launcher works, and in turn how the web line works in this game, because they're essentially the same thing. You're creating a point A and point B connection with a tight rope across so you can walk. One difference between the two that is actually so huge that it's kind of incredible that no one has noticed how big this one difference is, even though it's a small change. The web line isn't set to only be used once. The line launcher in Batman was a tool that you'd only use once or twice, and that was that. You only had the one with you. The line launcher, by contrast, can be shot almost anywhere at any time, even from other web lines. What this means is they've effectively given you the ability in stealth sections to create your own spider's web. Because with well-placed web lines, there is not a section of a stealth area in the game that you can't reach without being completely safe from sight. And adding that in with Miles' ability to turn invisible, and stealth has been upgraded to the point where you have so many tools that a high-level stealth player will be able to clear out an outpost just as fast, if not faster, than a seasoned combat player. This leaves us with only a few more aspects of the game to touch on, that being the story and the world itself. Now, we talked about the world a little bit in the first section with how the map is bigger and you have much more of it to explore, including Queens and Brooklyn, and that's a great addition, being as those two parts of the New York landscape are important to our two Spider-Men. Beyond that, the game does a fantastic job of making New York feel like, well, New York. And from the outset, it does an even better job of setting up the state of affairs in the beginning of the game. Now, before I move any further, I want to give anyone who doesn't want absolutely anything spoiled to go ahead and get out of here or head to the next section. If you out, thanks for watching. It's been real. And if you're going to the next section, well, I'll see you in the next section. But I even know the game's been out for a little bit, and most people watching this probably already either played it or seen stuff. I just want to give them a chance to get up out of here if they don't want to be spoiled. All right, if you're not gone by now, that's on you. Okay, so moving on. This isn't going to be a breakdown of the whole story or nothing. There are plenty of other people you can check out if that's what you're looking for. But what we are about to talk about is the way the storytelling is in this game. Because this is, like I've said before throughout this video, the third game of the series. And this is not just a sequel to the 2018 Spider-Man, this is also a sequel to Miles Morales. And this game does a great job of pushing forward the stories of both men, as well as growing the character of every other member of the cast. Even in terms of gameplay, Mary Jane between the last game and this game has invested herself in a good pair of hands, which improves even the worst parts of the first game. So when I say no one is left out, I truly mean no one is left out, because in my humble opinion, there are no wasted opportunities in terms of storytelling and growth in this game. Every side activity you do either tells you more about the person under the mask or the world that they live in. Let's take, for example, the first villain you make contact with in the game, Sandman. Sandman is actually part of a series of side activities where you fight sand clones and you collect crystals of his memories and blah blah blah. You later learn that Sandman also got caught up with Kraven and his desire to be taken out because of his, cancer or whatever. I only bring this up to show that even side activities that initially seem to have nothing to do with anything are woven tightly within the main series of quests involving Kraven the Hunter / Venom. This game is spinning a lot of plates throughout its runtime, and it does a better job of spinning them all than you would think. You tell the story of Kraven the Hunter, you move forward the story of Miles and Martin Lee, and you finish the story of the Sinister Six. You see what happened to those characters after the first game, you see the world after the aftermath of the second game. You tell the story of Venom as well as setting up future events with Chameleon and Carnage. You see what's going on with Yuri, and you see growth with Miles as a solo Spider-Man, as well as growth within the relationship between him and Peter, going from student and mentor to two fully fledged heroes within their own right. That's not to mention the first breadcrumbs of the villain we've all been waiting to see since the first game, Green Goblin. Now, as impressive as it is that they were able to do all of this over the course of one game, I would say the most impressive thing about it is the fact that this game does all of that without seeming bloated. And that's because even the smallest side activity in the game, the spider bots, the on-map collectibles, have been treated as if they are an actual mission and have something going on. There's intrigue connected to them, there's mystery surrounding them, and when it's all said and done, it sets up the future of maybe some kind of Insomniac Marvel Spider-Verse situation going on, or maybe even just an Insomniac game about Miguel. Who knows? All I'm saying is, regardless of how you feel about it, I think that the kind of narrative detail that this game goes out of its way to have is commendable. So from here on out, I'm actually going to be talking less about the game itself and more so about the discourse surrounding it, and just kind of how we are as gamers in general when we talk about games and certain things that we tend to do that may not be the best in terms of good discourse for the improvement of a medium we all care for. So if that's not nothing you want to hear and you want to peace out, deuces. But before I get too deep into that, I want to make it clear that I don't think this is a perfect game. There are obvious issues with it, some of which have been patched out, like for example, when you played for a while, sometimes your suits wouldn't load in, and once when I was playing the game swinging around, one of the buildings just straight up didn't load in. The things on top of the building, like the water tower and heaters and electric transformers and all that, those were visible and present, but the building itself was gone. I was able to swing right through where the building would have been. So the game is not perfect, and I think the photo mode could be a little better. The fact that you can't pose both Miles and Peter if they happen to both be in a shot is a little disappointing, considering Cyberpunk has that in it, and that game came out a while ago, so they could have put that in there. I don't think the game is perfect, but there is a lot of things in the discourse surrounding this game that I think is a bit unfair. To start, one of the main problems a lot of people seem to be having with this game is that, one, it is short, and two, it is more of the same. And these two complaints are a bit weird to me because, one, this is a sequel, this is a franchise, so yes, it can feel like it's more of the same, but that's because at the end of the day, it is the same series of games featuring the same characters doing the same shit. So, in one aspect, yes, it's gonna feel like it's more of the same because it is more of what you should be enjoying. If you didn't want to play more of Spider-Man, why did you buy it? This is one of those things that gamers like to do where sometimes we'll buy a game simply because it's the new hotness and not necessarily because deep down we truly want more of it. Or we have expectations of a game being something completely different than what it has been previously based on, well, nothing. Continuing on with the topic of the length of the game, it is admittedly on the shorter side in terms of general games because a lot of single player games can get up to the 60-80 hour range in terms of doing everything in its various ranges, where this game clocks in from anywhere from 27 to 40 some hours to do the whole thing depending on how good you are at the game. And that is on the shorter end. However, unless you've played a game like The Order 1886, a game that is 12 hours long from front to back, with half of that being cutscenes, I don't think you really know what a short game feels like. Because yes, this game is on the shorter side, but that's because it was very efficient in what it does. And the feeling you have at the end where you wish the game was longer, that's because you really enjoyed what you did, or at least that's what it seems to me. If you enjoy something and it's fun and it ends and you want to do more, yeah, it may have been short, but you can replay it. There's New Game Plus coming soon, there's DLC coming, play it on Ultimate. You can get more out of the game, but what was there was of extremely high quality, and that is something that can't be ignored, where there are plenty of games that are coming out that are not feature complete or where certain features are lacking. A game that comes out where just about every feature in it is tight, smooth, doesn't waste any time, narratively focused, and is just an efficient game with no bloat. I don't know how we can really be mad at that, especially within the superhero game genre, a genre known for being short because comic book storytelling is fairly short. You fight a villain, you do that for a little bit, and then you're done. These games are the same. You have your main villain and you have your side villains to fill out the side content. You wrap out all the stuff and you move on to the next thing. Nothing lasts forever, but if what you played was of a high quality, I cannot see how you can be upset with the fact that it's not the longest game in the world. Now, you can have your own opinions. I'm not saying that you're correct or you're wrong, but it is something that I think we should think about in terms of the discourse in games when we say that a game is bad simply because it wasn't as long as we would have liked. That has nothing truly to do with the game itself. If the game is done, it's done. Much like a good show like Samurai Champloo or Cowboy Bebop. They're only one season long, 17 episodes, but the shit is good. Are they short? Yeah, but I wouldn't really have it any other way. Let me ask you this. Let's look at a game like Batman Arkham Knight. That game is notorious for having way too many Riddler trophies. And as someone who got the 100% in that game, I can agree. There was way too many Riddler trophies in that game, and it extended the playtime of that game longer than it necessarily needed to be. That's one of my favorite games of all time, but that just drags. There are no moments like that within Marvel Spider-Man 2 because everything is short, sweet, and to the point, but there is a fair amount of it. There actually is a lot of side content packed to the brim. If you go ahead and don't do any of the side stuff and just let it all play out until every piece of side content is unlocked on the map and just look at it, you'll see it's actually quite a bit. But it's enjoyable all the way through and is going to leave you wanting more, which is what they always tell you to do in show business. Another common complaint I see are people upset with suit powers being taken out of the game. And this I see as another point of friction between those that played Miles Morales and those that did not. Because this is another one of those things, much like the gadget wheel. If you played Miles Morales, you would see they were moving away from that kind of thing in that game as well. Because every suit didn't have a power, no. What they did have were suit mods and skills attached to them. And they've moved away from that to just have skill trees for both characters as well as a shared one, so that the suits can just be that, cosmetic suits. And on the point of suit powers, let's keep it 1,000. When that game came out, there was no guarantee that a sequel would be on the way. So having a game that can just celebrate Spider-Man in a way that no other game had previously was good enough on its own. But when you're dealing with a franchise where it's almost guaranteed that you're gonna get other games, it kind of changes how you make things. But beyond that, let's go even further. When you played Marvel Spider-Man 1, how often did you really change your suit power? Most players, they would have their favorite power for whatever point they're in the game, and as they play, they use the new power they get with their suit for maybe 5 minutes, and unless that's their new favorite, they're probably going to end up going back to the one they're using previously, meaning there's a lot of content left by the wayside. And some of those powers, like increased web throw damage, have just been turned into abilities because that power sucked. Why would you want something like that on a cooldown when you could just have that as an ability you have? It was a feature that was there and it was cool, and sometimes I miss aspects of it, but what it has been replaced with is far greater in service of making smooth combat and actually having meaningful content in the game, as far as the abilities with primary and secondary effects in the skill tree, as well as allowing for some of the cooler suits in the game to be rewards for doing side quests and other activities within the game. This just makes it so suits are, just like everything else, a reward for doing things you were going to do anyway, instead of making you get suits out of order just to get a power that you wanted. It's a very small thing, but it's just a quality of life improvement for the player because you get to do things when you want, how you want them, as soon as you unlock them. Speaking of suits, there is something I've seen floating around the internet that I just want to go ahead and give my 2 cents on, just because I'm already talking about suits. So, one of the last suits you get in the game is this suit here for Miles. And as you see, he has decided to let the hair out, let it fly a little bit under the hood. A lot of people are talking about this suit is stupid because of that. Now, before I go further, I don't really like this suit either. It's not because of that, it's just I don't really like the shoes and the pants. I don't like how it flows together, and I think there are plenty of better suits. Like, look at the End or the Spider-Man 2020 suit, whatever. Point being, a lot of people are saying this is silly because a supervillain could get a hair sample and figure out who Spider-Man is. And I'm like, alright man, if you don't like the suit, just say you don't like the suit. But that is probably one of the dumbest things I've ever heard in my life. Because one, this is the Marvel universe we're talking about. A universe where a lot of heroes just straight up go by their name or their secret identity is known. Beyond that, this is Marvel's Spider-Man's universe by Insomniac. A universe where on average 2 to 3 people figure out who Spider-Man is per game, just by voice and mannerisms and other bullshit like that. And beyond that, if you're dealing with a villain that's that good, that technologically sound, that hell-bent on figuring out who Spider-Man is, that they're using hair follicles, bruh, they should be using sweat, saliva, blood, any of the things that you should be able to get a hold of if you have a decent enough fight against Spider-Man. Hell, you don't even really have to win. You just need to get one cut to figure out who Spider-Man is at that point. So what exactly are we talking about here? Anyway, I have one last thing to talk about surrounding the discourse of this game, and it is probably the one that bugged me the most, and and made me want to make this video because I genuinely do not understand it. There are plenty of videos going around and other things saying that this game is full of pandering and wokeness. Now, beyond the semantics of what exactly they mean by that, I have no idea what about this game is pandering. Now, throughout the course of the game, you do deal with people that are blind, you deal with people that are deaf, you deal with various ethnicities of people because, this is New York, the most densely populated city in America, so naturally there's all kinds. Maybe it was because there's a Brooklyn Visions mission where you help one of the students ask their boyfriend out to homecoming, but, well, that's only one mission and it's about 10 minutes of gameplay, and let's keep it 1,000. Even if it was a heterosexual couple, that mission would be exactly the same. Too goddamn long. Okay, so maybe it's the mission with the museum, and they have the Harlem Museum where the evil white producer came and tried to steal all this black music history, and maybe it was that. But I would say, well, this is simply American music history, and this probably would have been important to Miles regardless because he is someone that does music. That has been something the game has made no issue of showing to us, and let's keep it 1,000 once more. If this was a museum of all white artists, 100% white artists, it would be exactly the same as far as the message this could portray, because the music industry is just like that, where producers try and take credit for the actual work of the artist simply because they gave them the platform to be seen by more people than they might have through grassroots efforts at the time. Or, oh, I got it. Maybe it's the part where Mary Jane gets corrupted by the symbiote and she turns into Scream, and she is reading Peter his rights. She is giving him the business. Kind of tell him about herself a little bit, about how she's holding it all together, she's paying all the bills, and wood wop whoop the bam. But I gotta keep it a million with you, famo swine. She was right. Bro can't keep a job. The best job he had was taking selfies as a superhero. Like, come on, man. Dude's doing a lot. So she kind of had a point. So yeah, help me out. I genuinely have no idea what is going on with the claims of pandering and being woke in the game. If you don't like it, just say that, man. Just say that, but at least be honest. Well, I've gone on long enough here about this. You think I'm right on the points I made here today? Shit, I think so, but am I tweaking? Shit, maybe. You can let me know down below. What do you think about all of this? And, well, see you next time here on the 3-Star Lounge. Bye now. Oh yeah, if you enjoyed, tip your server. Leave a like.